Hey economics students, in this video we're moving on to exchange rates. We've talked a lot about exchange rates already and how they impact the level of aggregate demand in the Australian economy. Up until this point we've been basically thinking about how an increase or a decrease in the exchange rate would affect AUD and therefore economic activity, etc. In this stop point, what we're really doing is thinking about what would actually cause an increase in the exchange rate or a decrease in the exchange rate, what's also known as a appreciation or depreciation. This video is probably just going to be about the meaning and measurement, and we'll do a little introduction, but VCA has given us the factors, like they often do, to tell us the things we need to learn or the factors we need to learn that will influence the exchange rate, that will appreciate or depreciate the exchange rate. They're all there, you can read them, but let's get into this little introductory part. So, to define an exchange rate, just to recall, it is the value of one currency when we swap it with another currency. For example, the value of the AUD when we swap it with the US dollar, which is often the most often quoted exchange rate. There is also the trade weighted index, just to throw a little curveball here. Remember, an index collates or simplifies complicated numbers down to one easy to read number. What the trade weighted index does is it takes a number of exchange rates and it turns it into an index. It's actually the exchange rates that of our major trading partners. So an exchange rate is either a currency pair, one currency compared to another, or it's the trade weighted index, which is just another way of expressing exchange rates. So for example, in Australia, if you were to go overseas and you were going to the airport and you were looking to exchange your Australian dollars, you might look at these currency pairs here. They might be quoted like this: AUD to the US dollar. Now what does that actually mean? The AUD to the US dollar equals 76 cents. Well, what that means is one Australian dollar will buy 76 US cents. Because the Australian dollar is quoted first, that's basically saying what will this buy in US dollars. If this was a different currency, like this might be Vietnamese dong, one of my favorites, it might be one Australian dollar buys, 30 Vietnamese dong. Or if you were overseas, if you were in the US of A, if you were in the United States, you'd probably see it quoted this way because their currency is the US dollar. So it would be quoted as one US dollar buys $1.41 in Australian dollars. So over here, one US dollar equals $1.41 AUD. So just make sure you know what you're looking at, because often in multiple choice questions, they'll show you this and they might say, explain how this movement to 0.66 cents will impact XYZ. And they won't tell you that that's a depreciation. You need to know that's a depreciation. So we need to think about, well, what moves the value of the Australian dollar or the trade weighted index? What factors will influence the exchange rate? Now, whenever we're thinking about exchange rates, we think of them like any other market from microeconomics. So whether it's the market for bananas or the market for Australian dollars, we know that the forces of demand and supply will determine the price, particularly in a perfectly competitive market. And the foreign exchange market is a perfectly competitive market because all dollars are the same. And there's lots of information, there's many buyers and sellers. It's close to a perfectly competitive market. So we really need to think in these terms. If we're thinking about what would appreciate or depreciate the dollar, we need to think about the demand for Australian dollars and the supply of Australian dollars. And obviously, if there is an increase or a decrease in demand or supply, that will change the exchange rate or change the value of the Australian dollar. So what do? We plot it on a demand and supply diagram. Instead of having prices of bananas up here, we have the AUD versus the US dollar, or this could just be the trade weighted index, or this could be any currency pair. Down here on the x-axis, we have the quantity of currency traded, and we have the demand and supply. So the reason we do this is if there is, for instance, an increase in demand for Australian dollars for some reasons, we don't know why yet, that would increase the value, and we call that an appreciation. I'm not going to write it all out. If there was, for some reason, an increase in supply of Australian dollars in the foreign exchange market, I should have said that, then that would decrease the price of the AUD to US dollars, and we call that a depreciation. So we need to think of the foreign exchange market as being everywhere. It's not one place, it's not the airport, it's any time a currency is exchanged or swapped, it's part of the foreign exchange market. Okay, in the next video we'll look at the factors that will determine a shift in the demand or the supply curve, and therefore an appreciation or a depreciation of the exchange rate. Bye for now.